When you look at the classic Bernie Madoff story, there was no real business there. The whole thing, as I understand it, I think, was just one big Ponzi scheme, right? FTX, that was a real business.
Sam Bankman-Fried, the CEO of the now bankrupt FTX crypto exchange, has been repeating for weeks that he was unaware that FTX was co-mingling user funds.
Carolyn Ellison says you knew that FTX funds were being funneled to Alameda. Did you know that?
I knew that there is an open margin position there and that involved.
I know, but that's not what I'm
dollar.
asking. If she's in court and you're in court and she's under oath and you're under oath and you're asked, did you know that these funds were being funneled to Alameda, what is your answer?
I did not know that there is any improper use of customer funds.
He was unaware that FTX customer funds were being stolen, despite FTX's own terms of service. All of that user money is now gone, to be clear.
Okay, next please. Go on, Stanley.
I got a $100 check from my grandma.
Well, that's fantastic. A really smart decision, young man. And it's gone.
What's all gone?
The money in your account. It didn't do too well. It's gone.
What do you mean? I have $100.
Not anymore, you don't. Poof.
FTX users have little hope of ever getting their crypto back. Yet, the CEO of the company, SBF, has seemingly been on a press tour making sure that you know that just like FTX users, he's also looking for the one responsible for the FTX fraud and the FTX collapse. To refresh your memory, provide you with the full story, and give you context for the clips I'm about to show you, this is SBF at the New York Times Dealbook Summit with CNBC host Andrew Sorkin. Sam is asked the direct question, and he answers at the end. It appears FTX was co-mingling user funds. Were you aware of that?
The terms of service for FTX, it says none of the digital assets in your account are the property of or shall or may be loaned to FTX Trading. FTX Trading does not represent or treat digital assets in users' accounts as belonging to FTX Trading. So how is it possible that Alameda had this loan of such a large size?
So there's that piece from the terms of service, but there were a number of other parts of the terms of service and a number of other parts of the platform on top of that. There is the borrow lending facility, where users were lending billions of dollars of assets to each other, collateralized by assets on the exchange. You had obviously futures contracts where there are leveraged positions on. Now, of course, all of this, it's meant to be the case that these are positions where FTX could, if it needed to, margin call those positions and close them down in time such that it would cover all of those, all those shorts, all those liabilities. Obviously, that wasn't the case here, and that's a massive failure of oversight, of risk management, and of diffusion of responsibility from myself running FTX.
But just make this very straight. Was there commingling of funds? That's what it appears like. It appears like there's been a genuine commingling of the funds that are of FTX customers that were not supposed to be commingled with your separate firm.
I didn't knowingly commingle funds.
Well, it appears Sam Bankman-Fried has been doing so many interviews lately in so many spaces and putting himself on record to free questions so much. Just yesterday, he might have finally admitted to commingling funds and user fraud. By the way, it seems Caroline Ellison, the CEO of Alameda, FTX's sister company, she's been talking as well.
I think like every week or so, something like weirder than the previous week would happen. For me, a lot of it was just about sort of, readjusting my expectations and being open to whatever happened.
Please watch this video if you haven't already. I'll link this below. It seems like Carolyn Ellison has been talking to the FBI and telling her story. Anyways, SBF finally admitting to fraud? Let me show you, and you tell me. Great journalism by CoffeeZilla. Sam Bankman-Fried just yesterday was asked by CoffeeZilla in Spaces, If it's true that you didn't invest FTX user assets, not even in the treasuries, why do those FTX user assets no longer exist?
If it's true that you didn't invest client assets, not even in treasuries, as you said via a now deleted tweet, why do those client assets no longer exist?
I'm just taking a stab at this because I don't have the data, but my best guess is the following, is that there were a lot of those assets remaining. We processed something like, $5 or $6 billion, I think, of withdrawals over the few days prior to, or I guess the few days, during the crash. And there are still a few $1 billion of those remaining, I think, in the estate. And so you put those together, you have many billions of dollars of those assets. But I think, and so that's part of the answer, is that there were a large number of actual assets there. I think there's one follow-up question you probably still have there, which is, well, how about people who didn't withdraw and were also in that bucket? And part of the answer is, well, there still do exist some number of billions of dollars of assets.
So Sam Bankman-Fried claims many FTX users were able to withdraw their assets, and those who didn't withdraw still have their assets as part of FTX. This is where it gets interesting. Again, good job to CoffeeZilla. I've been following this guy for a long time. This is one of the ways I stay up to date on everything crypto. Anyways, CoffeeZilla then asks Sam if Sam can guarantee that FTX user assets are backed one-to-one. Sam hesitates and then starts to talk about a news story. Listen to the end of this clip. Sam Bankman-Fried admits FTX user money was fungible. They paid out everybody from seemingly the same fungible wallets. I can't believe he admitted to co-mingling like this.
No, is there one-to-one assets? Because that's the whole thing. We're talking about a separation of funds. So those funds should be a completely different, in a different place, in a different wallet than everybody else. What you talked about, servicing billions of dollars of withdrawals, has nothing to do with those specific digital assets, because that's just first come, first serve, whoever pulled out first. We're talking about people who never agreed to have their funds loaned out, who never agreed to have their funds put on margin. They should have, according to your terms of service, one-to-one backing. It should all still be in some bucket somewhere. And are you confident today, as the CEO of FTX, this has nothing to do with Alameda, are you confident today to say that those are absolutely real and they exist and they're present, people are backed one-to-one on client digital assets?
So I think, and again, I'm just taking a stab here, but I think what happened is that if you look at especially a lot of the withdrawals that happened, those withdrawals were not necessarily only coming from people who never used margin trading or futures or staking or anything else. Those weren't just withdrawals from people who were keeping one-to-one backed, or were sort of just keeping them as pure spot balances. And it was omnibus wallets between the various categories. And so I think that the answer to your question is that a number of those assets were withdrawn by people who had balances on the exchange, potentially in the few days prior to the collapse. And if you wanted to think about it this way, it could be that, that happened. And then, when the collapse sort of completed, that effectively meant that there was, if you wanted to put it this way, like fungibility created during those withdrawals between assets for people who had and had not been using.
So did you hear what SBF just admitted? FTX user money was fungible. That means that there was not a separation of funds. If there is fungibility between two different FTX buckets of money, that means that there are no separate buckets. There's just one bucket, meaning FTX users who didn't agree to lend their money to Alameda or lend their money to margin traders were forced to take on that risk anyways. Doesn't SBF see that as defrauding FTX customers? Listen to what he says.
I can take the money that someone who didn't sign up to those same risky terms didn't agree to. Isn't that fraud?
So I'm specifically talking about what happened in the days immediately during and following the crash, in that 3 or so day period. And during that period, I think we may have allowed, just generalized withdrawals. I think that was, if you're saying that we should have held up withdrawals for everyone who had an open futures position, for clawback potential or something like that, I don't know, maybe that would have been the right thing to do. I hear where you're coming from on that. I felt, at the time, that, we wanted to treat customers equally. It was an incredible...
But they had agreed to different things, so you can't treat them equally.
And now that Sam admitted that they were commingling funds for the withdrawals, he starts getting a little bit defensive. SBF accuses CoffeeZilla of grandstanding, monopolizing the time. Just listen to the clip. Why do you think he acts like this?
I mean, it's like, this is the whole problem of the story of FTX and Alameda, is all the funds were being commingled. Isn't this just another story of commingling funds, except this is now FTX, which you can't pass the blame to Alameda anymore. This is your company, your funds, that you are treating all the clients the same when they clearly signed up to different terms of service.
So I just want to respond to that. And please, I completely respect your question, but you have monopolized all of these discussions, CoffeeZilla. You need to let others speak, and you need to respond to what I'm saying and not grandstand as much here. I completely understand where you're coming from. But to answer your question, I didn't make a decision there. We processed withdrawals as we normally do until it became clear we couldn't anymore, at which point we shut them off. And it was the case that, at that point, there was a big liquidity hole. That's what happened. If you want to judge that process and think that we should have been spending those days frantically trying to code up a new withdrawal process, I disagree with you, but I understand where you're coming from.
Okay, but it's not about coding up a new withdrawal process, Sam. It's about treating FTX clients the way you told them they'd be treated. So that's even worse. If this is how FTX always processed withdrawals, then the FTX terms of service have been a lie from the very beginning. The withdrawals weren't segregated as promised. They literally were in a huge pot of money, first come, first serve. SBF conned everyone? In addition, SBF just can't keep his story straight, it seems, because in another Spaces last night, SBF admitted that when customers were buying and selling and trading Bitcoin on FTX, they weren't actually buying or trading real Bitcoin. It was just a fake entry into their account at FTX. Any media besides Altcoin Daily want to cover this?
Because that makes sense as to why there were no more Bitcoin to withdraw, where customers like that I know had Bitcoin balances, because those Bitcoin actually didn't exist, because it was just notional. You were just letting us buy notional tokens that didn't actually really exist.
Or another way of phrasing that.
Because otherwise you would have had to have the USDC somewhere.
Right. Yeah. I believe that what you're saying is, in fact, part of what happened.
By the way, if you're planning to attend Bitcoin Conference 2023, let's hang out. It's going to be epic. Use code Altcoin Daily, 10% off. This is the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world. Use code Altcoin Daily, 10% off. See you there. Post this video on social media. Get this story out to as many people as possible. Subscribe to Altcoin Daily for daily crypto coverage. Watch this video of Caroline Ellison if you haven't, and I'll see you tomorrow.